want to do the bell ringer real quick? All right, which event is being depicted in this cartoon? The collapse of the Soviet Union. Which policy most directly contributed to the situation shown in this cartoon? Yes, this policy of glasnost, right? Which topic could best be studied by analyzing this excerpt? The Russian Revolution. No, the Cold War. Right? Even, guys, just look at the date, 1987. The Russian Revolution happened way, way back. Right, the wall referred to in this excerpt was used to what? B, right? Limit the movement of people, the Berlin Wall. All right. There she is, back and ready. All right. So we're going to go through some notes. And then obviously you guys see the stations around the room. Some of them are at your desks. We will be doing that afterwards. All right. So the struggle for democracy in Africa. All right, so nationalism in Africa. Africans have been colonized by Europe for a long, long time, right? They resisted this colonial rule. Nobody, promoted infrastructure, bridges, roads, or schools. These people faced lots of high taxes, forced labor, right? A lot of slavery. The economy's focused on a few cash crops. We know that Europe used Africa mostly for its resources, right? Borders ignored ethnic groups, caused conflicts. Because what type of ethnic groups were there in Africa and still are? What would you call them? Starts with a T. Tribes, right? You would call them like African tribes. What is that similar to? What groups in the United States had similar? Native Americans, right? So we know that they were split up by ethnic groups. We know that, certain different tribes of Indians or tribes of Africans would have certain places they wanted to be. But when you put new borders in, that's going to create conflict between the two. All right, so Pan-Africanism. So it's that movement to promote unity of all African people, right? We talk about Africa for Africans. I think we've talked about India for Indians, remember that? It's just an independence movement, right? They want to be in control of their own country. So encouraging that independence and inspired by leaders like Kwame Nkrumah and influenced by nonviolent ideas, just like Gandhi. All right, so Kwame Nkrumah. So in 1957, the Gold Coast, see right down here for your geographical context, right? Right on the coast of Africa, gains independence from Britain. They named Ghana after the ancient African empire. Kwame Nkrumah uses protests, strikes, and boycotts. Other than Gandhi, who does this sound like? Nelson Mandela. Think of who else? Martin Luther King Jr., right? That leads right back to that connections assignment we did a little while ago. He helped form the Organization of African Unity, and they worked to end colonialism in all of Africa. So Ghana is, again, the first African country to gain independence, and we see from here that it continues. In Kenya, they are led by Jomo Kenyatta. So he's very similar to Nkrumah. He supports nonviolence, but he also advocates for the use of violence when necessary. So think back to when we talk about South Africa. Mandela was very nonviolent. We talk about what's that concept of nonviolent protest being nonviolent? Civil disobedience. However, did some of the African protests and stuff kind of get out of hand, get violent?
Yeah.
Yes. So this is similar, however, he advocates for it. He says it's okay to use it when we need to. So this leads to the Mau Mau Rebellion. So the British set laws to keep the Kenyans off of their own farmland. These farmers come together and form a rebellion. They used guerrilla, right, hit-and-run tactics on white farmers to hopefully gain back their land, right? They want to get them off land. And Kenyatta is imprisoned by the British for 9 years, accused of leading the uprising itself. So you can draw some connections here between Kenya and South Africa as well. So then after the rebellion, Britain releases Kenyatta. Over 10,000 people were killed. So that's, pretty serious casualties. He becomes the first prime minister, and he maintains peaceful relations with Britain. What would Kenya gain from keeping a good relationship with Britain? Trade, right? Resources, money even. So keeping the support of Britain is very important. They want to remain part of the British Commonwealth. However, he is the leader, In 1972, Queen Elizabeth II even visits Kenya, and it's that symbol of renewed relations. So they're saying, okay, you can be in control of your own country, but we can still be trading partners. So Algerian independence. So the French colony of Algeria, right up here, so now we're talking northern Africa, very, very northern Africa. They're unhappy with French occupation. We know that. You wouldn't like if someone came in, to your room, your house, told you what to do. So the National Liberation Front comes in, again using those guerrilla warfare tactics against France. This war causes heavy casualties, but they gain their independence in 1962, so just 5 short years after Kenya. And the civil war continues in Algeria. Military leaders and Islamic radicals have all fought for control of the country. So if we're talking here about different religious groups wanting control, what other countries can we compare that to? When we talk about religious groups fighting. Israel, right? Jerusalem, Israel. We talked about another one. Talked about Gandhi, where's he from?
India.
And what other country? Pakistan.
Yeah.
India and Pakistan. Remember we talked about separating the Hindus and the Muslims? So similar here. We see that religious tension, the violence and separation it can cause. So that brings us to Nigeria. So now we're back down by Ghana, right? So we were up here, now we're down here. We're kind of skipping around. So there are 3 dominating ethnic groups. We got the House of Fulani Muslims in the north, the Igbo Christians in the south, and the Yorubas in the south as well. Nigeria is the most populous country. What does populous mean? Populated, lots of people, right? So that means they have the most amount of people in Africa. They win their independence in 1960. They discover oil in 1961. Why is oil so important?
It fuels everything.
So can you make a lot of money from it?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is very exciting for Nigeria because there's a great trade export, right? Tribalism leads to the civil war between the Muslims and the Christian tribes. Again, we're seeing that religious conflict, maybe even that was perpetrated by the colonialism by separating those people into borders. So after independence, ethnic and religious divisions lead to violence, right? They gained their independence in 1960, but then in 1966, the country is taken over by a military coup. We talked about coups a lot in Latin America. Remember, we talked about overthrowing, right? They're taking power for themselves. So then throughout the 70s and 80s, fierce military rule tries to create a stable government. But we don't really see that until 1999 when people finally gain the power to elect their leaders, right? People vote now to put in place a leader. They are still the wealthiest country in Africa. Oil remains one of their biggest trades, and they are also the Hollywood of Africa as well. That's what they're kind of considered, right? So one of the biggest, best, nicest countries. This is actually, I think this is Lagos. This is one of their actual resorts there. So, looks very fancy, right? Almost kind of looks like Florida. That's what I always think when I look at that. All right, so this brings us to the Rwandan genocide. So we'll talk more about this tomorrow when we go over our modern genocides, but here's a little background today. So a population of about 8 to 10 million people, so pretty big population. And you got the Hutus and the Tutsis. So the Tutsis were the minority and the Hutus were the majority. But the Tutsis ruled for, almost 100 years just themselves without colonial rule in place. Where else do we see the minority leading? The minority in power? What other area?
Whites of Africa.
In South Africa, right? Yes. Whites of Africa. Right down in South Africa, you have the National Party that has power over all black South Africans. So this is very similar, however, both are African people. So the Tutsis rule from 1860 to 1924. They are a monarchy. Then the Belgians come in and colonize and give the Tutsis the power. However, they now have ID cards that are increasing that division between the two groups. So when we think about ID cards, what other government regulation rule could you compare this to in South Africa? What did they have? The passbooks, right? So we have ID cards and passbooks, and they're supposed to keep one group oppressed, right? You don't have as many rights. You don't have as much freedom in your area. So the Hutus are forced into labor, and the Tutsis are given power. So historically they've had power. And the Tutsis were seen to the Belgians as the superior ethnic group. They were seen as closer to Europeans. Remember during this time, the Scramble for Africa, you talk a lot about the white man's burden. And you talk a lot about savages and like racial superiority. So this is that thing. They felt that the Tutsis were racially superior than the Hutus. So we see that little 3-year fight for independence. The Hutus now take control. So the majority takes over the minority. And in 1990, a civil war begins between the two. Then in 1994, we see a culmination of that conflict, and 1 million Tutsis were killed in 100 days. That's just over 3 months. This is still considered one of the worst genocides in history. So when you guys are going around your stations, you'll read a little bit more about this, and tomorrow we'll watch some videos. But does anybody know one of the weapons that was used primarily to kill or hurt people during this? What do you think based on the look of his face? Whips and machetes too. Think of, you guys know what a machete is, right? They're primarily used for like clearing land, maybe farming too. So he was slashed multiple times by a machete and still lived, right? And here's like graveyards of the people. So very terrible, horrible, and we'll talk more about it tomorrow again. All right, so this brings us to Sudan. So now, again, the geographical context is just to help you kind of imagine where we are, right, in all these different countries in Africa. All right, so the Sudanese government wants to make Sudan a Muslim state, and the government-backed militias carry out violence. This is where we see that ethnic cleansing. What does it mean to ethnically cleanse, or what does ethnic cleansing mean? We talked about this a little yesterday and 2 days ago. Okay, so everybody's one religion, yes, but what do you do to the people who don't agree with your religion?
Get them out of here.
Get rid of them, right? You want to kill them, get rid of them. Where have we seen this before? Germany with the Jewish people, right? We'll see it with the Armenian genocide as well. So remember, ethnic cleansing is another word for genocide, right? So the Janjaweed, the Arab Muslims, begin to cleanse all of the non-Arabs. They say, we only want Arab Muslims here. And the Janjaweed is supported by the Sudanese government at the time. So thousands flee the country for safety, obviously, right? Because they don't want to be killed or hurt. And there's still that ongoing civil war, humanitarian crisis. So today, currently, Sudan is in a civil war with the Janjaweed still, and they still continue to carry out ethnic killings in Darfur, which is, can you click over for me? I think there we go. Darfur. So this is considered the first 21st century genocide starting in the year 2000. So this little area of Sudan is where a lot of these killings are taking place. Okay, so we see two areas that aren't really that far away from each other, right? And we see two genocides just in that area. So we're kind of, we can see how that could be a result of the borders put in place during colonial times, right? The ethnic differences there. Can you flip over for me, please? There we go. All right. So this leads us to challenges in Africa. So they are facing environmental challenges as a result of their, colonial ties and all of that. So deforestation, cutting down forests for lumber, and overgrazing by cattle. Does anybody else know where in the world we see one of the biggest deforestation issues? The Amazon rainforest, right? I'm sure you guys have probably talked about that at some point in science, right? So deforestation, they're getting rid of all these trees, and even though trees are technically a renewable resource, does it take them a long time to grow again?
Yeah.
So this is becoming a big issue. Desertification, right? The Sahara is expanding, growing 50 miles per year. What do you think happens to all of those animals who lived in those forests that are now turning to deserts?
They don't have a home anymore.
They don't have a home anymore, right? So they might die. This is where we could see the extinction of certain species, right? So this is becoming an issue, losing wildlife, climate issues, right? So we see all of these different weather pattern changes, carbon dioxide buildup, soil erosion, famine, extinction of plants and animals as well, right? It starts kind of small. 50 miles is pretty significant. When you look at it, you're like, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal, but over time is where we see issues, right? So we need to stop it now before it gets any worse. Can you click over, please? Thank you. All right, so some key challenges they're still facing. We've talked about this a little bit with our South Africa unit. However, we haven't gone fully into it. So many countries are still developing their economies. We've seen how all of these countries are kind of war-torn. There's lots of wars and different ethnic and religious conflicts and all of that, so they're still developing their economies. They want to focus on stronger industries and job markets because who primarily, before they gained their independence, who had all the control over their industries and their jobs? The British, the French, you know, maybe like Germans, Belgians, all of that. They had control over all of this. So now these people are like, we have to figure it out for ourselves. The standard of living remains a priority. We still see a lot of foreign influence, right, in key industries and resources, economic control, because who has the infrastructure to support a lot of these corporations? Bigger, better countries, right? You know, countries like Britain, maybe countries like the United States, countries like Germany, France, all of that. There's still those ongoing ethnic tensions linked to those colonial borders, right? You're separating people in a way that kind of pits them against each other. We still see those weak governments, military coups, civil unrest, human rights issues. So still kind of similar to that Latin America where we talk about all of the military coups. And we did talk a little bit about the AIDS and HIV crisis. So devastating disease, right? Millions are affected across Africa. Over 2 million deaths annually. So this creates a lot of orphan children. So that means they have to find a place for them to be, right? A lot of orphan children, loss of skilled workers, slower economic growth, because if people are sick, can they work? No, and what does that put a lot of strain on? Where are people gonna be if they're very sick?
The hospital.
Hospitals and healthcare systems, right? You might not have the infrastructure, meaning the buildings, the areas in place that is going to support that many people. We see the effects of urbanization. What does urbanization mean? Move to the cities from rural areas. So they see, well, maybe I'm not making good money farming or the land, right? We see the desertification, deforestation, all that is leading to the ruining of the land. So people are going to live in cities, but this creates rapid population growth in shanty towns and slums, right? That's an actual picture from, I can't remember where it is in Africa, but this is where people would live, right? Those houses don't look very nice, and they look like they're all kind of pressed up together. So it strains what?
They look like they're made out of like garbage, like whatever they can find laying around.
Some houses are made of garbage. There's actually a lot of humanitarian, I don't know if you guys ever see those videos of people cleaning up like waterways, and they use like the big nets, or they go in and it's like a sped up video and they're like, you know, shoveling garbage. Sometimes they can make what's called like an eco brick or like a trash brick. So they create like a casing and they basically shove it full of garbage, and then they can turn that into building materials, which is actually really cool when you think about it, because where does all our garbage go?
To the waste.
Into like landfills,
Yeah.
right? What happens when we run out of space for landfills,
We make new ones.
right? So it's just kind of crazy. So we have to find new ways and new places to put trash. All right, so now we are going to start our station. So groups of two, Cooper. You haven't been here the last couple days, so you should probably listen and await my instructions. All right, so you'll come up, grab a sheet of paper, and get with, don't get up yet, get with a partner. Everyone should have a partner or a group of 3. Group of 3 is the max though. And there's 2 different sets of stations. They're the same though. So you'll have 4 documents. Make sure you number your questions so I can grade it later. All right, so get started.
That was horrible.
I'll write my name. Sure, no.
As long as you answer all the questions, I will.
Oh, actually, I don't know. Ariane is
Yes. Everybody should have a piece of paper. You guys might have the same answers, right? Because you're in a group, but. No. You write your answer. I'm saying make sure you number
I
it.
went to Berlin.
Yes. You don't need to write out the question. All right, find a group and get started, guys. I know.
Yeah. Microscope.
Yeah, right.
So they wanted.
Feel free to ask if you have
They wanted that.
questions.
They're trying international.
No, do not write the question, just the number. So like if your questions start with 3, write document 2, you know, then question 3. That's just so I can like grade it, so I'm not just like, okay, what is all of this, right?
Okay. 12. Who were the mobile? Violet. For number 12, Violet.
Dude, that's actually nasty.
Bill. Lieutenant.
Reading it, okay.
Who's right there?
Yeah.
Militant
I guess I'll give you at least a minute to go over.
Nationalist movement.
Get out of here, Jamie. Screw the three now.
What was their goal?
We're trying to copy her.
I mean, they killed a lot of Kenyans. So.
Oh, did they? I thought it was a lot of the.
Oh, here. The ethnic cleansing? Their goal was ethnic
So that's like the numbers of the question, that's how I have it labeled.
13.
Guys, please write down the numbers that are attached to the question, don't just write like 1, 2, 3, 4, unless those are the numbers, okay?
Breaking through the colony.
Okay, man. Go find another document. So you know.
Jamie, there's one right here.
Explain the impact of the You can just say hundreds of things. No, not hundreds. Hundreds of sorry. Many Kenyans died. It says right here. Massacre.
I tried to get any bigger and that printer only had the freaking boat. I was like, what the heck? I know, right? Get back.
Okay. And explain how change was Britain viewed the colony. The British were convinced that they might have to give Kenya up. So,
Convinced of.
yeah. Convinced they had to do it. Okay. Explain why Jomo Kenyatta was a conviction. He was praised for being look, he was praised for being he was anti-colonialist. Yeah. And
Says 15.
and 14. Anti-colonialist and efforts towards reconciliation between religious groups or indigenous groups. 15. Wait. No, this 15. Wait. Oh, okay, so I'm just gonna write 15 right here. I mean, okay. You know what? I'm just gonna write a little arrow to flip them. My 14 is supposed to be 15. And my 15 is supposed to be 14.
Okay, so
14. Who with? President? Connie. C-A-N-E. How did he become the first? How did he become the first president? I mean, he led the party to victory.
yeah, sure.
Okay. Where are we going next?
There's one right on the middle table.
Yeah.
Thank you. Give me a nice break.
That's the 1800s.
Define Pan-Africanism. That's what Africa for Africans, right?
So like,
What does that mean?
pro-African.
What do they want? They want
They want
what?
control of the country. Right.
Control of their country, so independence, right? So you can say control of their country, right? What's a similar experience that believers in Pan-Africanism would be united by? What did they go through? Not concept experience. What did they go through that would cause them to want slavery, colonialism, anything like that, right? Your land is invaded by people, you're gonna want them out.
He brought sides together.
How did the Berlin Conference?
There's one behind Aria and Amber, that was a shorter one too.
What number is it?
That might be the one you.
Kenya was colonized by the British during the Age of Imperialism. Britain's influence in the area was established by the Berlin Conference.
Why would you go? Okay, yeah. Why would you go?
Kenya.
Yeah.
K-E-N-Y-A. Kenya. Because, like, remember, it's the scramble of Africa.
Chopped cheese.
Yeah. Chopped cheese. The Mau Mau uprising began in 15. The Mau Mau were a violent military nationalist movement. Who were the Mau Mau?
Watching your YouTube channel.
He did.
I cannot see that.
Right, because he said he wants to get rid of the negative impacts. If he wants independence, he's not going to go with having control, right?
It's called Avalon. What was their goal?
Their goal was to get Kenya back for Kenyans.
Yeah.
So in 19, I know.
It was, and I identified the officer.
The Mau Mau's carried out a massacre of innocent civilians, forced hundreds of thousands of Kenyans into concentration camps, and stripped some cities of civil liberties and violated many. Huh?
So I would just say, I know the way that's phrased makes it sound like you need like a actual number. We're just supposed to be comparing the difference in those years, right? 30 years.
Kenya for the
Almost
British?
every
Keep Kenya for the British.
Jason, do you need to go on to the nurse's profile?
Explain how the impact explain the impact of Mau Mau uprising on Kenyans. Explain how it changed the way Britain viewed the colony.
We were only explaining.
Ideally, all of them.
Identify those two problems newly put that information to the cabinet one.
Yeah, we had. What is that chart? Huh?
Oh, I figured putting it down.
Everyone wants. Oh, it's for that. Everyone wants. Again.
And then all you need is just the general.
So you're talking about that.
Four.
But yeah.
Oh, we done for 13.
A massacre that killed many innocent civilians.
There's two,
13. What? A
there's
massacre that.
4 documents,
killed
but 2
many
sets of
innocent
stations, so that way,
Excellent.
mostly my 7th period, well, the 7th period class, there's like 19 kids, so I didn't want to only do one set, because that's big groups, right? How you guys doing?
Okay. Who was, who did he become the first person in Kenya? Oh, he's right here.
We talked about this.
He left prison.
The Mau Mau rebellion. Right? He leads a revolutionary movement.
My boy, their president wasn't fabulous. He left prison. Who was president? What are we putting for who we want?
I'm finishing out 13. Saw them as
I think Elizabeth War is just to show the difference.
Oh, what do we have to finish up second?
they started to see them as people.
Huh?
They started to see them as people. I think.
Started.
Who was Jomo Kenyatta, first president of Kenya?
Did you ever receive that email for the hotel
Cool. Chill.
He was the first president of Kenya.
that I want? But I need to time with you to get up to talk already. So what I was thinking of doing is just printing out to because regardless of where they are, they're probably gonna be packed, so I'll probably send it out to the top group and see if she can do it. Yeah, so there's only 4 documents, there's 2 of each. Just that way so we can have
He led the party to a victory
Yeah.
in the 1960 general election.
He led
We just did that. Yes.
In 1960.
Yeah, it's not.
From 1960 to 1960.
Explain why Jomo Kenyatta was a controversial figure.
We have to
He was
explain.
praised for being anti-colonialist and for his efforts towards he was criticized as dictatorial and authoritarian. He was
there's one over there.
dictatorial
With
and
Amber and
authoritarian.
Harvey. You guys are on document 3, right? Yeah. Yeah, you guys can go over there.
It was dictatorial and authoritarian.
great. Look at that. We got 2 of them done.
Yay!
Now what? Now.
No, I just put my hand on like that one.
The one in front of Jackson. It's not over there.
Don't touch the handles.
Okay, just keep working. Keep working noses over here. Yeah, hold on.
I know, son.
I'm gonna collect them, so if you want, you can just send them to my desk. Right on the counter or something is fine, as long as make sure your name's on it.
the mile a mile. What was the violent national speed? Violence.
His objectives are in italics.
Fighting for
Let's go, boys.
art. Fighting for
I'm hard of hearing.
Thank
send their people to the
I'm hard of seeing too.
freedom. I guess.
On the political union of all the indigenous.
He gave him a bad look.
Well, they're on 10, so. We might have some time tomorrow, so don't stress too much. Your talk.
Can we please get over to this? Louis Jomo Ken.
What is Pan-Africanism? They want Africa for Africans, so they want to get rid of colonialism, right? And then in number 10, it's in the italics, it says, our first objective is to abolish from Ghana poverty, ignorance, If you're done, put it on my desk, there's a stack in there. Well, we should have some time tomorrow. So don't stress too much, but just make sure you hold on to them so that way tomorrow we can work on it.
Change people
Or maybe just don't leave and just, you know. Don't worry about that. Alright, so we will be finishing these up tomorrow if you haven't already finished them. Okay, so just hold on to that paper, bring it for tomorrow.